Before the 24th Division had even departed Hollandia for Leyte, General MacArthur and the Joint Chiefs were already planning their next moves after Leyte in the great chess game of war. In that game, the infantry are the pawns. The commanders had their eyes on the Japanese stronghold of Luzon in the Philippines. They knew they would need air bases near Luzon to support the ground invasion. They also needed to establish a supply base. Mindoro, situated in the western Philippines, south of Luzon, and only lightly defended by about 1,000 Japanese soldiers and some 200 marooned enemy sailors, met the requirements. The Leyte campaign had weakened the Japanese ability to defend Luzon by siphoning enemy troops, ships, and planes away from Luzon and nearby islands. However, Luzon was still heavily defended by 260,000 enemy troops spread around the island. To deceive the Japanese regarding the location of the Allied invasion on Luzon, a series of operations were conducted to give the impression that the invasion location would be in southern Luzon and not the Lingayen Gulf on the northwest coast. The 21st Infantry Regiment would play a role in that deception during the Mindoro campaign. The West Visayan Task Force was assembled for the Mindoro invasion. The task force included troops from the 24th Division's 19th and 21st Infantry Regiments, along with some miscellaneous other units. The island of Mindoro is about half the size of New Jersey. It is the third largest island in the Philippines. It is very mountainous, with some coastal plains in the northeast, east, and southwest. Rain is a daily occurrence, even in the dry season. The humidity is high, and malaria and other tropical diseases are prevalent. On this map, you can see Luzon lies immediately to the north of Mindoro. You can also see the location of the airfields needed by the Allied land-based aircraft to support the upcoming Luzon invasion at Lingayen Gulf. The yellow labels on the map show operational locations of the 21st Regiment in the Mindoro campaign. The route taken by the convoys involved in the Mindoro campaign is shown in red. There were a series of separate convoys involved. The initial invasion at San Jose in the southwest corner of Mindoro occurred on December 15th and did not involve the 21st Regiment. During the invasion, there was no enemy opposition. A beachhead was quickly established, and the airfields in the San Jose area were seized. By noon, San Jose was occupied and work had begun to condition the airfields for use by Allied aircraft. 2 of the airfields were already in use 8 days later. On December 21st, 1944, the 3rd Battalion of the 21st Regiment sailed from Leyte. Japanese attacks on this resupply convoy at sea caused casualties and heavy loss of equipment. Throughout its journey, the battalion was under constant attack, including 20 kamikaze aircraft and bombardment by enemy battleships, cruisers, and destroyers. The 3rd Battalion, 21st Regiment, lost 6 men killed and 32 wounded. The 3rd Battalion came ashore at San Jose. The remainder of the regiment departed Leyte on December 27th. On the 28th, this convoy was under bombing and kamikaze attack all day, and 2 ships carrying gasoline and munitions were blown up with loss of all aboard. However, no men of the 21st were on board those ships. Other ships were also bombed and sunk, and the regiment suffered some casualties. The troops landed at San Jose on December 30th, having been attacked and bombed all the trip. Once ashore, we took defensive positions and were subjected to repeated enemy air bombings for several days. The 2nd and 3rd Battalions of the 21st Regiment soon moved out of San Jose and took an active part in the campaign to liberate Mindoro. This was accomplished with a series of shore-to-shore and overland movements northward on the east coast of the island and also on nearby Marinduque Island. Our movements were also intended as a diversion to make the Japanese believe Mindoro and Marinduque were being developed as staging areas for an invasion of southern Luzon. However, by the time the deception value could have been realized, the Japanese were well aware of the January 9th landings in northern Luzon at Lingayen Gulf. For our eastern Mindoro campaign, our 1st Battalion, consisting of companies A through D, remained at San Jose. In the first 10 days of January 1945, elements of the 3rd Battalion successfully defeated enemy garrisons at Bongabong and Pinamalayan on Mindoro and at Boac on Marinduque Island. On January 15th, with assistance from a small Filipino guerrilla regiment, the 21st Infantry moved overland from Pinamalayan toward a reported Japanese strong point of 400 enemy troops at Gusei. At the same time, Company F attempted a move by water in commandeered sailboats from Pinamalayan for Najuan. However, unfavorable winds would force Company F to abandon their commandeered sailboats and make the march to Najuan on foot. Meanwhile, the 2nd Battalion was conducting a 4-day march through the mountains. This scene is typical of many of the roads we encountered in the Philippines. Most of them were really nothing more than winding dirt trails. The movement was on foot with only ponies and buffalo carts for transportation. During the march, 2 rivers were crossed on parts of bridges destroyed by enemy delaying forces. Every item of equipment had to be manhandled across the rivers. This is one of the villages we passed through on Mindoro Island in the Philippines. The destruction from the war is apparent. Note the carabao, water buffalo, pulling a sled. On the left you can see a 2-wheeled carriage called a karomata being pulled by a pony. These were the means of transportation for natives. On January 19th, the 2nd Battalion, which was traveling with Regimental Headquarters Company, surprised and dispersed the enemy at Gusei. A Japanese patrol that was unaware their base at Gusei had been surrounded unknowingly walked into our regimental command post and was ambushed by headquarters personnel. Only 1 enemy soldier escaped alive. As non-combatants, our medical personnel were kept in rear positions away from frontline action. On Leyte, there had been instances of Japanese troops who were known for their infiltration tactics to appear suddenly in our rear areas. That same situation had occurred on Mindoro. The unexpected is always possible in war. As the Japanese fled north from Gusei, Company F, marching from Najuan, arrived in time to cut off their withdrawal. 3rd Battalion lost 2 of its companies, Company I, which had been left to guard Pinamalayan, and Company K, still on Marinduque, led the assault on the provincial capital of Calapan with support from guerrilla forces. The enemy withdrew to the hills in the west, and the 21st Regiment entered the town on January 24th. Here is a Mangyan native we encountered on Mindoro. We learned we could not always trust island natives to have our best interests at heart. Some of them were being used by the Japanese. Soon, another native appears. Here, our Filipino scout obtains information on the enemy location from local natives on Mindoro. The Filipino guerrilla force, with mortar and machine gun units from the 2nd and 3rd Battalions, carried out the campaign to finish off the defeated Japanese force. I am on the left with a small group of soldiers and a native. You will notice that I am not armed as a non-combatant member of the Medical Corps. Standing in the center of the road is Captain M.G. Haywood. Two-wheeled ox carts, like the one shown here, assisted us during the Mindoro campaign. The people of Calapan expressed their gratitude to be free from the Japanese and entertained our troops with good food and Calapan gin. These are some photos from Calapan. I am leading on the left with a group of some armed Filipino guerrillas and another soldier. Notice the M1 carbine of the soldier taking the photo is lying on the beach in the foreground. On January 26, 1945, as we finished our campaign in eastern Mindoro, a noteworthy event occurred near the French village of Holtzwihr in the European theater of the war. Second Lieutenant Audie L. Murphy was commanding Company B of the 15th Infantry Regiment, 3rd Infantry Division, when 6 German tanks and several infantrymen attacked his company. Murphy ordered his men to fall back to defensive positions in nearby woods while he covered their withdrawal and called down artillery to slow the German advance. Witnesses later recalled how Murphy climbed on the burning tank destroyer, which was in danger of blowing up at any moment, and employed its .50 caliber machine gun against the enemy. From this exposed position, Murphy killed over 20 German soldiers and repelled their attack. Murphy then led his company in a counterattack that killed or wounded 50 more German soldiers. On April 23, 1945, at the age of 19, Murphy received the Medal of Honor for his actions. Though Murphy's heroism on January 26 was extraordinary, it was not the first time Murphy had distinguished himself. He had previously received over 20 awards for valor. Murphy died on May 28, 1971, at the age of 45, in a plane crash near Roanoke, Virginia. He was buried with full military honors in Arlington National Cemetery. Audie Murphy and I both served in the U.S. Army in World War II. Another thing we had in common was the middle name, Leon. We rested in Calapan for a short while. When it was time for us to leave Calapan, I got some help from these Filipinos to carry my duffel bag, backpack, and gear to our ship. Notice the small child is wearing my helmet. I took this photo of the scene of our departure from Calapan. Local inhabitants gathered on the beach while our troops boarded the ships to head for San Jose on the southwest corner of Mindoro. It was a relief not to be making the return trip across the island on foot. Back at San Jose, the regiment set up camp. A sign was posted that read Gimlet's Grove. A gimlet is a rock boring tool. The regiment got the nickname Gimlet when it was stationed in Hawaii in 1921 for its prowess in interregimental athletic competition. While in camp, replacements, equipment, and clothes were received, and a period of rehabilitation and training was started. At this point, I should mention that an element of the 21st Infantry Regiment, an armored unit known as Cannon Company, was detached and involved in the fighting to the north of us on the Philippine island of Luzon. It landed at Nazugbu on January 31st and provided fire support for the advance of the 11th Airborne Division through March 3, 1945. During this campaign, 4 out of 8 self-propelled mounts were destroyed in action, and the company suffered heavy casualties. When their mission was completed, they returned to rejoin the regiment at our camp on Mindoro. The 1st Battalion of the 21st Infantry Regiment, which had remained at San Jose during the operations in eastern Mindoro and Marinduque, was involved in a separate action on the Japanese-occupied island of Lubang. That action is described here. On the night of February 26th, 2 days before the main landing, a small advance force landed on the island of Lubang off the northwest corner of Mindoro. They had been transported by a PT boat which dropped them off 1 mile from shore in rubber rafts during the night. Once on shore, they conducted a reconnaissance patrol and set up a roadblock to cut off an enemy retreat into the jungle. A part of this force also attacked a small enemy garrison in the capital city of Lubang, killing several enemy soldiers. This advance force was in radio contact with the main landing force. On March 1st, following a naval bombardment, the 1st Battalion of the 21st Regiment made the main amphibious assault on Lubang at the town of Tillich. In fierce fighting and sustaining some losses, the battalion dispersed and destroyed a force of more than 200 Japanese before returning to San Jose on March 6th to rejoin the rest of the regiment. Here I am doing my own laundry at our bivouac area in San Jose, Mindoro. Notice my primitive handmade furniture put together from scraps of wood from cargo crates. This is the envelope for a letter I sent while on Mindoro. The Army postmark in the upper center is dated January 25, 1945. Note the letter was stamped at the Harrisburg post office with postmark in purple ink on February 9, 1945. The return address shows my rank as lieutenant. Also, I addressed the letter to my parents, Dr. and Mrs. E.R. Rhein. This would suggest that I was not aware that my father had died on January 16, 1945. When my dad died on January 16th, I was moving with the Army on a dirt road somewhere north of Pinamalayan on Mindoro. Unfortunately, the letter that was sent in this envelope, along with its subject matter, is missing. Services Friday for Dr. Erastus R. Rhein, 69, 4504 Market Street, who died Tuesday, January 16, 1945, at his home, will be held Friday at 2 p.m. at the Dugan Funeral Home, 1600 Market Street. The Reverend Dr. Jacob E. Rudisil, Christ Lutheran Church, officiating. Burial will be in Willow Grove Cemetery. Friends may call at the funeral home, Thursday from 7 to 9 p.m. Dr. Rhein had practiced dentistry in Harrisburg 45 years and taught school before attending the Baltimore College of Dental Surgery, University of Baltimore. He was an active member of Christ Lutheran Church, having been superintendent of the junior department of the Sunday School. Survivors are his widow, Mrs. Sarah G. Rhein, 2 sons, Dr. Charles S. Harrisburg, Lieutenant William L., with the Armed Forces in the Southwest Pacific, 2 daughters, Mrs. Austin J. Alighter, San Antonio, Texas, Mrs. William E. Murphy, Jr., at home, 1 brother, Dr. Harry D. Harrisburg, 1 sister, Mrs. Lulie R. Pittman, Linglestown, 2 nephews, Major Harry and Frank Pittman, who are also dentists, bringing the total of dentists to 7 in the immediate family. and 2 granddaughters. On February 23, 1945, while I was still on Mindoro with the 21st Infantry, Associated Press photographer Joe Rosenthal took this photo of the American flag being raised on Mount Suribachi during the Battle of Iwo Jima. What an incredible picture. The fighting for the island continued into March 26th. By the time of this photo, I had already been informed of my dad's death. I was feeling the loss and also unable to be home to offer any help or comfort to my mother, brother Charles, or my sisters Isabel and Miriam. I had a job to do with the Army, which I continued to perform while dealing with my personal grief privately in my thoughts. Notice that my return address in the upper right of this letter, dated March 18, 1945, gives my rank as captain. From this it can be established that my promotion to captain came through sometime between January 25th and March 18, 1945. Notice the reference to John Smith in the letter. Appears to be something encoded. The letter reads as follows. In the Philippines, March 18, 1945. Dear Mother, yesterday I received one of your letters, mailed February 26th, so at present the service is not too bad. Early part of this week I received the telegram that John Smith had sent. Your name was signed to it. I presume that is the one you had reference to. Everything here at camp runs along as usual. The days are becoming rather routine. Our dental clinic remains in its present status, that of filling the soldiers' teeth and an extraction occasionally. Yesterday, I extracted an impacted molar. It slipped out easily. Several weeks ago, we concentrated on the removal of bad teeth. Consequently, that phase is practically taken care of. The shape of the country here is rather interesting. Early part of the week, we witnessed an all-night rain that settled much of the dust, and with many planes taking off into the air, have noted a considerable change, even though the latter stirs up much confusion in the air. It's flat around these parts, but several miles distant, one can note high rolling and towering mountains. Early in the morning, when the air is fresh and clear, these hills are beautiful to look at, especially since the sun's rays shine at such a low angle and produce an odd effect of highlights and shadows on the peaks and gullies. In them, the thwarted aborigines live in a wild and primitive state. From your letter, I see you intend to sell the mountain land. With all the bills staring you in the face, I imagine you and Aunt Grace must be beside yourselves. I would hold on to the 200-acre farm as the last resort. If things ever return to Depression days, at least one should have something to eat from a farm. And don't forget, all will have to suffer from the consequences of this war in some form or another. Charles is all wrong in his prediction of the Americans moving to these parts. Even though they are beautiful to behold, the average American is not content with natural beauty such as here in the tropics. Average GI wants to get back to the vaunted civilization of gay lights and dazzling automobiles. The Japs are content to move to these islands, but not the American, unless a big money deal were conducive to such a spot as Manila proper. I'm glad to know you have paid off the mortgage at 1504 Market Street. At least you will have that home to live in, which is clear of everything. The inheritance tax must be a tough pill to swallow. Mother, that probably is only the beginning. Watch the taxes fly when this war is over. That will be a bigger problem than this war itself. Tommy Airlighter, as you said, spoke of the continued good war news in Europe. I hope he is correct and that phase of the battle soon ends. Wish I could write the same encouraging news from this theater. I can imagine a long drawn-out affair over here with no end in sight for a long time. So you see, I am not counting on being home for several years from now unless the welcomed unexpected turns up. Mother, if Isabel would like you to visit in Texas, I believe I would accept the invitation. Now would be your best chance to see some of the other country and note how other people live. I'm sure you could stand a change in scenery. You spoke of my health after the operation. I am feeling fine and all the better for it. My rear end is perfect, and I don't know what it means to be constipated anymore, for they also dilated my sphincter muscle, and that is a wonderful relief. I've had many surgeons tell me that that alone cures constipation. That seems to sum up the news from around these parts. I'm guessing that we may remain here for some time in the future, but plans and events can change overnight. With love, Bill. March 23, 1945. Dear Mother, yesterday I received your airmail letter of March 5th and enjoyed reading it. I appreciated the color picture of the airlighters. I'll enclose it in the envelope. I suppose by now some of the spring birds are returning to Harrisburg. As you said, the early robins have arrived. This month and next reminds me of raven time, when I roamed the country on Thursdays looking for a nest. You spoke of return from the State Highway Department. It certainly would be wonderful if you could receive $10,000 for their cutting through your land. Wonder what other people have received. That sure would make it a lot easier for you, not so? However, I think things will work out for the best. In that case, you probably would be able to go through with your plan of doing over the garage. However, right now, I doubt if building materials are available. I'm glad you did not have to sell the 35 acres. Somehow or other, I have a big hunch that the government after the war will be lending money to veterans for building homes, and that many people will be moving to the country. So that is where your lot selling may come in at. And certainly you and Aunt Grace should get a greater return than $3,000. Several lots along the road may bring more than that. So if you can keep things together until after the war, I figure there may be a good boom for several years. I received news from the church that I read, and if I am not mistaken, Ralph Landis must have been in the hospital for some time. You spoke of his returning home temporarily. Everything is going the same around here. We get up at 7 in the morning, eat at 7:30, go to the dental clinic at 8, stop for lunch about 11:30, rest till noon, eat, go back to work at 1 or 1:30, and stop around 3 or 4 p.m. Then I go for a swim in the creek, eat supper at 5:30, and attend a show 3 times a week. That's my regular schedule. Several days ago, I had a long letter from Frank Pittman. He seems to be doing all right. Evidently, things are coming along much better at home. With love, Bill. March 25th, 1945. Dear Mother, this afternoon, while writing a letter to Wilma, I received another one from you. So this week I've received at least 2, one mailed March 7th and the other March 10th. So that is rather good time. I read the clipping you sent of the fair boy from Harrisburg. I talked to him several times back in Oregon. Believe he was with the 91st Division. If I ever come across his outfit, I'll inquire more about him and just what happened. There's only a slim chance that I'll come across his group. Do you know what outfit he was with? Mother, I appreciate you sending me the sardines and fruit juices that you spoke of. However, in the future, please don't spend your points for juices. They take up much space in packing, too. Please don't tell Miriam's Bill to send me any juices. He will wonder what's the matter with me. Over here, it's a lot of trouble packing that stuff. I just struck upon a thought. Maybe Murphy could get access to Kodachrome film in Hawaii. The fellows here say that film there at one time was easy to get or purchase. If buying or rationing is the same as in the States, then it would be impracticable. At least Miriam might inquire. However, I could write to him and ask. So the fellows from Linglestown ask for rat traps. Well, we have the rats and traps both. Every night we catch our full complement. They are not too aggressive, but will eat anything lying around. There are many hawks flying over the kunai grass. Guess they obtain their full share too. With the airstrips utilizing much space, I suppose the rodents are congregated in numerous spots. Mother, you are telling me about lifting the ashes, etc.? Now honestly, you should take it easy along those lines, and the same with extra scrubbing and laundry. I appreciated the recipe for the cake. Nevertheless, there are some ingredients we do not have, such as eggs, butter, and cream. Once in a great while we do get the first two, but very seldom. I'm still doing dentistry and working fairly hard. Today was quite windy and dusty. Every day is not like this one. Last night we saw a good GI vaudeville show that was interesting. With love, Bill. P.S. Guess I told you previously I had a long letter from Frank Pittman. On April 1st, 1945, 7 days after I wrote my letter, the Battle of Okinawa began. It was the largest amphibious assault in the Pacific Theater. The fighting continued until June 22nd. It resulted in 100,000 Japanese and 50,000 Allied casualties. On April 12th, while the battle was still raging, President Roosevelt died and Harry Truman became the president. April 15th, 1945. Dear Mother, wanted to write previously, but honestly, news and happenings are rather commonplace around these parts, that I find it rather difficult to write of things. Recently, several of your letters arrived, and I enjoyed reading them very much. I received the pictures of Miriam and Gretchen in the winter snow. Gee, little Gretchen is not little anymore. Also, apparently this past winter produced much snow. Also received a long letter from Isabel in Austin with several pictures of the family. Anne at Christmas time and in Tawny's box. Heard from Reverend Ed Fry. He says Pennsylvania is witnessing one of its earliest springs. Some flowers are blooming several weeks early. Surprisingly, it is spring here too. Since we arrived at this location some time ago, many migratory birds are drifting in, and I believe several are building nests. The birds here in the kunai grass and along the streams are more similar to those back home when compared to New Guinea birds, in that many of them have catching songs. One bird in particular resembles our bobolink. Others sing and appear to be warbler-like. Right now, there is a chorus from all around. A bird about the size of our wren continually walks through our tent looking for termites that have been boring into the wood of our poles. Sometimes he walks to within 2 feet of us. Mother, you spoke of me seeing a Steinman boy? Truthfully, I cannot remember the incident. It's possible he may have seen me but never spoke. Mother, by this time you probably have the letter I wrote to Charles. What do you think of renting out my office? It's possible you may be able to obtain a good revenue from it. Honest, I believe I'll be over here at least 2 years from now, unless the unforeseen thing turns up. With this unconditional surrender idea, war in the Southwest Pacific can continue for a long time. Otherwise, it would have been over probably before this. Either way, the peace terms would have been the same, and this war won't settle anything so far as I'm concerned. A patient is here now, so I'll close. With love, Bill.